Receptionist humiliates Keanu Reeves, not knowing. He owns the hotel before we dive into most interesting stories. Subscribe the channel and let me know in comments box from where are you watching from. The grand entrance of the Belmont Hotel gleamed under the warm glow of its golden chandeliers, casting soft, radiant pools of light across the gleaming marble floors. The intricate details of the lobby, from the elegant, tufted sofas to the grandiose crystal vases filled with fresh flowers, spoke of the hotel's prestigious reputation. Every corner of the space oozed sophistication, luxury, and wealth. This was a sanctuary for the elite, a place where the world's most influential figures gathered, seeking privacy, comfort, and a touch of indulgence. It was an exclusive realm that only the privileged could access. At the reception desk, Lisa adjusted her crisp uniform, the delicate rustle of fabric the only sound in the otherwise hushed room. She stifled a sigh, glancing toward the growing queue of guests forming before her. The day had been long, too long, and with each passing minute, the irritation that had settled like a weight in her chest seemed to grow heavier. Her patience had already been tested repeatedly, and with each entitled guest who demanded more than the service they deserved, she felt her resolve slip just a little further. It was a feeling she was all too familiar with, being treated like nothing more than an extension of the hotel's efficiency, a cog in the well-oiled machine that was the Belmont. So, when an unassuming man in a weathered leather jacket and jeans approached the desk, she barely spared him a glance. "I need a room," he said, his voice calm but deep, carrying a quiet confidence that piqued her curiosity, though not enough to mask her impatience. Lisa looked up briefly, her gaze sweeping over him. His scruffy beard, shoulder-length hair, and unkempt appearance seemed out of place in the polished, pristine surroundings of the Belmont. He looked more like a drifter, someone who might wander into a dive bar for a quick drink, rather than a guest who could afford even the most modest suite here. Suppressing a smirk, she straightened her back, placing her professional mask firmly in place. "I'm afraid we're fully booked, sir," she said, her tone cool and dismissive, the words spilling out with the same rote efficiency she had used countless times before. The man raised an eyebrow, a flicker of interest passing over his face. "Really? I was told there were vacancies," he replied, his voice remaining gentle, yet carrying an edge that suggested he wasn't easily deterred. Lisa exhaled through her nose and glanced at the booking system on the computer screen. A few rooms were indeed available. However, something about this man, the ease in his posture, the way he didn't seem to fit into the carefully constructed world of luxury that surrounded them, rubbed her the wrong way. Maybe it was the weariness in his eyes, the kind of exhaustion that spoke of untold stories. Or perhaps it was just the weight of her own fatigue, the accumulation of hours of endless service. Regardless, she wasn't about to make an exception. "The Belmont caters to a particular clientele," she said, her voice laced with subtle condescension. "I can recommend other hotels that might be more within your range." The man's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, as though he found her reaction more amusing than offensive. "And what range would that be?" he asked, his tone light, almost playful. Lisa's eyes flickered briefly to his clothes, worn jeans, a faded jacket, before returning to his gaze, which was steady and unyielding. "Look, sir, this is a luxury hotel," she continued, her words more forceful now. "We have a strict dress code, and—" "Lisa!" A sharp voice broke through her words. Lisa whipped her head around, startled, as the hotel manager, Mr. Dunham, rushed toward the desk. His face was pale, his usual poise completely shattered as he skidded to a halt, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The man before her, however, remained composed, folding his arms with an air of quiet dignity. "Mr. Reeves," Dunham stammered, his voice trembling. I wasn't expecting you." Lisa's heart skipped a beat, her mind struggling to process the words she had just heard. The name echoed in her ears like a bell tolling, each syllable sharpening her growing sense of dread. Keanu Reeves? The Keanu Reeves? The actor whose name was synonymous with global fame, the philanthropist whose charitable work had touched countless lives, the man who was a living legend. Her breath caught in her throat, and her stomach churned. She had just dismissed Keanu Reeves. The very thought of it made her feel lightheaded. "I was just asking for a room," Keanu said calmly, his voice devoid of any hint of frustration. "But it seems your staff believes I'm unqualified to stay here." Dunham's face morphed from shock to fury as he turned toward Lisa. "Mr. Reeves owns this hotel," he hissed, his words laced with disbelief and anger. Lisa felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Keanu Reeves didn't just stay here. He owned the Belmont. This wasn't just any guest. This was the man who had the power to shape the very foundation of the hotel she worked for. And she had just treated him like an unwelcome intruder. Lisa stammered, her voice faltering as the weight of her mistake pressed down on her chest. Keanu, however, raised a hand, halting her before she could continue her apology. "I don't want her fired," he said to Dunham, his voice quiet but firm, free of anger. "Everyone has bad days." Lisa blinked, startled by his generosity. He had the power to end her career with a single word, but instead, he chose empathy. He chose understanding. "But," Keanu continued, turning back to Lisa, his eyes locking onto hers with quiet intensity, "I do want something to change. How you treat people. You judged me on my appearance, didn't you?" Lisa's breath hitched, her mind going blank as the truth of his words settled over her. She had. She had made assumptions based on how he looked, on how he presented himself to the world. There was no denying it. "People deserve respect," Keanu said softly, his tone filled with quiet wisdom, "regardless of how they look." His words lingered in the air long after he spoke, a reminder of her own bias, her own failings. She felt a deep flush of shame rise in her cheeks, and her stomach twisted with guilt. Keanu gave her one last, gentle smile before turning toward Dunham. "I'll take the penthouse." "Of course, sir. Right away." Dunham practically tripped over his own feet as he hurried to grab the keycard, offering it to Keanu with both hands as though it were a precious artifact. Keanu accepted the key with a simple nod, and without another word, he turned toward the elevator, his footsteps light and unhurried. The elevator doors slid shut behind him, and Lisa stood frozen at the desk, her heart racing as her face burned with humiliation. The rest of the guests in the lobby, oblivious to what had just transpired, continued on with their business. But Lisa knew she would never forget this day. It wasn't just about the mistake she had made. It was about the lesson she had learned, one that would stay with her forever. People deserved respect, and she had a long way to go before she could say she truly understood what that meant.